everyone. First things first, I have to brag a little bit. Lost another 2 pounds. Feel pretty good about it. I'm definitely noticing like changes in my body. My muffin top's starting to go away. Like it's pretty well on its way to go disappearing. And then the shape of like my butt is changing. So instead of being like kind of flabby, it's starting to develop a nice like kind of bubble shape, which is, I've never had a bubble shaped butt before, so it's very interesting. I'm also gaining muscle though, so that's part of it. I'm out working in the yard, actively doing things. I'm not just neglecting to eat. I am eating. I am eating less, but I'm also out in the garden working and walking and up and down the stairs a bunch, and like I feel like I have more energy to like dance and like you know how like in elementary school you do like jumping jacks or whatever, and if you were like the out-of-weight kid, you were the ones who hated fucking doing jumping jacks. I was in here like doing circles jumping around like a few minutes ago. Like, and that's the type of thing, is I'm able to do that now. I'm just jumping around in circles, just giggling to myself because I'm able to do it now. And I'm not out of breath and all that stuff. I mean, eventually I got hot because I kept bouncing around off the bed and whatnot, but that more shows that I have a poor sense of balance than anything else. And, you know, when you're spinning and jumping at the same time, it's kind of hard to not fall over. So I was more just sort of aiming for the bed at those points. So this video, I wanted to talk about, like, symbolism and spirituality and, rationality and logic, basically. And it's, here's the thing. Can you take spirituality too far? Absolutely. You've seen this with the Catholic Church. You've seen this with, different sects within Christianity, like the Westboro Baptist Church. You see it with, like, certain groups that are like Pentecostal, and they're speaking in tongues and stuff. Like, there's some of it where you go, is that real? That's very strange. That's very out there. It's very odd. And some of the views are like, oh, women should cover, and you know, you have this in more like modest like Christian sects like the Amish and the Hellerites. I think there's another like sect that's kind of like Amish, but they're not Amish. They're something else. But still very modest, based off of spirituality. The women have to cover, but the men have to cover too. The men have to wear hats. They have to. Amish have to have beards. They have to have clothing covering themselves all the way down to the wrists. It's men and women. Their point is that they live a very spiritual lifestyle. Now, a lot of people would see that as taking the extreme too far. And then you also have groups like Islam, which take spirituality too far. Now, here's where I think things go wrong. I think it goes wrong when people look at like things like the extremists in spirituality, like the Islamic radicalists, or the Westboro Baptist Church, or what looks at what the Catholic Church has done throughout the centuries, and the pedophilia, and all these nasty things. So anything can be taken to too far of an extreme. Anything can be corrupted and twisted. And put that out there. Even logic and reason can be taken too far. When you go to a point where you can only speak objectively, you can only have a communication if two people are there and they're able to speak objectively. This is one of the things that I have a problem with, like somebody like Stefan Molyneux. He's very much focused on logic and reason, which is fantastic. But his thing is, we can only have a conversation if we're talking about objective facts, because that's the only way that two people can really communicate and know what each other is talking about. And I'm thinking to myself, no, the way that we perceive each of those objective facts is subjective, right? So in the way that it affects us and how we feel, or you can have disagreements even. You can present a fact and you go, why is this fact here? One person can present one idea based off of their evidence and their arguments and whatnot. Another person can base, and this is the thing. You might be completely rational, but you might not be right. That's the thing. And maybe it's because you don't have the evidence. Maybe it's because you don't. But being closed-minded to the point where you won't even talk to somebody if they can't speak to you in your language is fucked up. So yeah, rationality I think can be taken way too far. You know, especially when you become cold in your rationality and unempathetic. Some people's rationality makes them go too far. Like, there's some people who make the argument that post-birth abortion should be legal. I've seen articles on this. This is not me faking. This was several years ago that I saw this article, but this was a real article, and it really, really pissed me off. And I remember reading it because it was like, this person was making the argument, and they're making that argument because, oh, well, the idea of abortion is, right, that the baby is not able to survive outside the womb by itself, so it's perfectly fine and moral to dispose of the fetus beforehand. And I can only make a spiritual, argument and an emotional argument against that. I can't make like a logical argument against why we shouldn't abort children. I can only make an argument from, I think it's wrong because each of us have an individual spiritual spark. And the only way I could get to even close to that in a logical sense would be to go, well, look, it's a human, it has human DNA, it has its own separate set of DNA, it's clearly a separate entity. If it had the same exact DNA as the mother, I would agree with you, but it doesn't. It has both DNA from the mother and the father, and so it's its own separate organism. That's a more logical reason why I would be against. But really, my interpersonal thought is that child, it has a spark of divinity in them, in my mind. It's a very spiritual concept, but there's a lot of people out there, when I say that, they understand exactly what I'm saying. Just as I were to say, if you killing something that has a divine spark lowers your vibrational energy, some people would understand what I'm talking about when I say that too. But here's the thing. Here's where I think is my point. My point is that every single person out there has a different language. They have a different way that they're able to perceive the world. Some people are a lot more logical. They have to have logical arguments. Some people have to have connection to something spiritual. And based off of their own spirituality and their own investigation, some of the shit that I say that makes no sense to somebody who's completely logical makes perfect sense to them. For instance, I'm starting to understand the concept of higher vibrationals and all this stuff, but it's taken me a long time to like get to the point, like in terms of exploring ideas and concepts and different things, and not just spiritual realm, but in mathematics and science and physics and geology and math and all these other things that in it, I feel like it all ties into one thing, is my perspective, right? And so I can see a world in which you can combine logic and reason and spirituality and mysticism and all these other things. You can combine those things. And you need to combine those things when you're talking to people. You need to be both logical and symbolic, because there's different ways that people understand. This is why I love Alex Jones so much. He speaks my language. He comes on here, he's like, the globalists are after you. Oh, like today, he was talking about Michael. I don't know. He might have recorded it yesterday, but anyway, talking about Michael Moore, and he goes on and on about comparing him to Jabba the Hutt, and I'm going to eat you, blah blah blah. And then he called him a Pigosaurus Moore, and I was like, That needs to be a t-shirt. That seriously needs to be a t-shirt. Anybody out there who draws Michael Moore like as a kind of a dinosaur pig type creature and puts Pigosaurus Moore on top, I would love that. I would just love to see a picture of that. That'd be fucking amazing. I think that should be a t-shirt. I think everybody should have a copy of it. Anyway, hilarious. But he speaks in these big sort of symbolic terms, and he uses big like emotionally charged words like globalist and revolution and patriot and all these words and it creates a vibe, and I don't know how to explain it other than that. It's like it creates, like, I suppose those who are more rational, it creates like connections in your brain. So you get like one area of your brain is targeted by the word like revelation. Another area of your brain is targeted by patriot. Another word is targeted by areas targeted by globalism or whatever. You have different areas of your brain, and maybe it's all connected in one spot, but you have different sections where you have memories kept of what these different things are. And him using these terms and bringing in symbolism from like Star Wars and from Christianity and from the American Revolution and all these things. He's trying to communicate an idea to you, but he's using symbolic languages. He's building connections between Star Wars and the American Revolution and patriotism and Michael Moore and Michael Moore being a disgusting human being, and part of that is calling him a Pigosaurus Moore, and stuff like that. And I love it because, he's saying things that do make sense. Like, for instance, he talks about, like, human-pig chimeras and stuff. That shit's happening. Like, he's not making it up. He's also, like, there's that famous meme of him going, "They're turning the frogs gay!" Well, they're not really turning the frogs gay. What they're doing is actually chemicals that are polluting our rivers or whatever is getting into the ecosystem, and it's turning a particular set of frogs from male to female, and so they're actually becoming transgendered. And so the things he talks about, they're not irrational, they're not crazy. Some of them are. I know that he amps up some of it, like some of the this is our new American Revolution, it's America 2.0 and blah 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 and all this stuff. It's like, yes, there's been a paradigm shift where my generation and the generations below me are starting to wake up and realize we want free speech. We don't want moral busybodies telling us what to do. We don't want war anymore. We don't want to be going into other people's countries and telling them how to live and overthrowing dictators and unstabilizing areas of the country anymore. We don't want that anymore. And you know what? When Alex Jones says, "We're going to have America 2.0, there's a lot of people out there who go, yeah, we need to overhaul all this fucking shit. And they're very, very charged words, but in your mind, they create like a mental image, they create an emotional response as well. And it's one way to argue a point with someone. It's one way to compel an idea. And it's not that you have to agree with the idea. Like, do I agree that Donald Trump is the most astounding, up there, high up, going to be the best president there's ever been in the entire world? No. You can look at him a little bit more rationally and go, he's a mild reformer. But in a sense, though, the patriotism, the hype surrounding Donald Trump that Alex Jones ramps up when he talks about how great Donald Trump is and all these things, he's very pro-United States. And the things that he sees Donald Trump doing, he likes in some regards. Now, he does talk about the things he disagrees with. I believe, or no, maybe that was just me and my dad talking. Oh, no, this has been a thing that's been going on. I had a conversation with my father yesterday about the Syria thing, and my dad, when the first Syria attack happened, when Trump decided to bomb their airfield because he thought that they dropped chemical weapons, my dad was like, yeah, the military always has like super great intelligence on all this stuff, and I'm sure there was, and blah 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 and all this stuff. And having a conversation with my dad last night, he goes, they're still doing shit in Syria. Like, I don't understand why. They're going to destabilize it. Russia doesn't want that. That's why Russia's getting pissed. Russia says that they're going to knock down one of our aircraft if they keep doing that. And he goes, I don't know if Trump is getting the right information anymore. I have no idea. And Alex Jones basically brought up the same thing. They truly do believe that, you know, like, Donald Trump is being lied to and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it makes sense. There's obviously some sort of deep state that's been there for a while. The government's been very, very corrupt for quite a while. And when Alex Jones makes these statements, not only does it convey a point, but it makes you motivated to want to get out there to try to do something. Make a video. Go out and start your own news broadcast. Like, how many independent reporters are out there? I mean, fuck, you could even call me an independent reporter if you really wanted to. I went downtown one time, recorded a Black Lives Matter protest. That's reporting right there. I mean, that's all you need anymore is a camera, phone, and the internet. And you can be your own reporter. I mean, that's citizen journalism right there. And I went down there specifically so that I would be able to record them and see what was going on and if there was anything crazy going on. I happened to show up. 2 people were arrested when I showed up, and the rest of it was fairly peaceful. They were like chanting and being obnoxious and shit and trying to break into the buildings and whatnot, but whatever. So yeah, my point is do you have to be rational? Absolutely. You don't want to make decisions based purely off of emotions. You don't want to base your decisions purely off of religiosity or spirituality or anything like that. You have to have a balance of rationality, logic, spirituality, and your emotional state, in my opinion, to be a balanced person. Whether you see spirituality as just what feeds your psyche, you know, your psychology, what feeds you as an individual. And so for some people, that's being in nature. For some people, that's art. For some people, that's, there's many multitudes of things that you can do. But you have to feed each part of that. You have to balance it all out. And when people talk to one another, they need to realize not everybody is balanced in the same way. Some people are balanced so that their rationality and their logical part of their mind is the dominant part of their personality, while others are more spiritually oriented and others are more emotionally oriented. And so you have to be able to communicate with all 3 different types of people in order to be able to get your message across correctly. So I do try to apply as much logic and reason as I can when I try to make my decisions, but there's part of it that is emotional, part of it that is spiritual, part of it that is symbolic in my mind. So those are just some of my thoughts. When you come across people who speak in very, very spiritual terms, like, oh yes, my vibrations are really high today, and I have all these crystals. I love crystals. Crystals are beautiful. And, you know, if they think that putting a crystal on top of their head and holding crystals in their hands and sitting cross-legged and going over and over again feed them spiritually, cool. A lot of what those types of people say is very calm, very peaceful, very loving and stuff like that. they're just big balls of love. And some of those people, they can be kind of sheltered, and if they're sheltered, they don't realize how horrible of a place the world can be to people. And so you get less of the rationality. They're not as rational. They don't see the other side necessarily. So when you talk to that type of person, you have to tell them some sort of narrative, a story. You have to explain it in a way that they're going to understand. You have to be like, okay, so once upon a time, there was God, and God created aspects of himself, and these aspects, one of the aspects wanted to go off, and she tried to create on her own, and she ended up corrupting herself and created the material world, and blah, 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 and all this stuff, and the corruption left her, and this is why there's evil in the world. You have to introduce the concept of evil to certain people for them to even understand what the concept is. And they have to have like a spiritual, some people have to have a spiritual framework for why there is evil in the world. It's an explanation, and it's a way that they can wrap around their heads, right? It's like you have purity. Pure purity would be God, which is all, which is everything, which is the totality, which is me, which is you, which is everything that you see and everything that you don't see. Now, what was I saying? Shit. Fuck, I hate when I do that. Totality of everything. God is the totality of everything. What was I saying? I'm so sorry. I lose my train of thought when I get rambling sometimes, and then I don't know where I'm going to go with it. Oh, the point is that, you know, I guess you have to talk to people in the way that they're going to understand you. When you give somebody a story, something to build a conceptual framework on, they do so much better with understanding concepts. So if you say, like, the Christian, classic Christian, why is there evil in the world? It's because Lucifer, who was one of the brightest angels in the sky, fell to earth when he refused to obey God. And not obeying God caused the corruption in Satan, which made him evil and made him fall from God, and puts him in the pits of hell, away from the farthest light of God. And that's a very spiritual thing. But there's a framework in which you can hold on to. It's a conceptual framework. Some people, this is actually why I don't like atheism that much. Atheism looks at the world and goes, there's no God, there's no spirituality. A lot of like scientific atheists. Some atheists they go, there's no God, but I don't know about the rest of like mythology, spirituality, and all that stuff. There's I think a larger group, subset, that go, there's no God, Christianity, all this shit's fucking stupid, all that stuff is garbage, you don't need it. But what ends up happening is they don't have a framework for good and evil. So the framework they start to develop is very scientific. It's all has to do with nature and urges and all these things, but it doesn't make the average person understand why there's evil in the world more. And there is evil. There's people who intentionally do things to hurt other people. People who torture other people to cause them harm and pain and misery. Like, look at what happened in North Korea with that poor college kid who came back brain dead and died. They tortured him. That's evil. That is. And that's the thing. It's not, people don't need an explanation for why the lion hunts the gazelle. We don't need an explanation for why, one group fights over resources. You can look at it and go, it's not necessarily evil, the death and the destruction's kind of shitty, but the intention is to get the resources. I'm not saying that war is good. I'm saying that you can look at it and go, I can understand why that war happened. But when you have somebody who comes in and they do things just to cause misery and pain and suffering, that's evil. And people need a conceptual framework as to why that exists. Because there is evil in the world. People do evil things. And in my opinion, it's mainly humans who are capable of evil. Because we are the only ones who can intentionally do something to cause somebody suffering. And this gets into some of the ethics that I learned about in college. I don't remember his name, but there was somebody who broke down sin, and they were like, well, what is sin, and how do you sin? And the first thing is, you have to have the natural inclination for it to begin with. So, for instance, if you see somebody's orchard of apples, well, it's wrong to steal and whatnot. So if you're walking by this orchard, your stomach starts to growl. That's just a natural, inclination within yourself. So that's the first part. But the inclination itself is not the sin. Then you have the actual desire for the fruit. So you're walking by, you see the fruit, your stomach growls, you go, damn, that fruit would be fucking delicious. I wish I had an apple in my hand right now. It smells so good. Oh, you can smell the ripeness. They're about ready to be harvested. And, but the desire itself, that's not sin. You're not actually doing anything. You're just thinking to yourself, oh shit, that'd be so good. The next part is knowledge. Do you know whether or not what you're doing is wrong? So if you're walking past an apple tree, you don't realize it's part of somebody's property. Maybe you think it's growing wild, or somebody dropped an apple seed and it just happened to grow there. And you come across the street, you don't know that it's somebody's yard. And so you're hungry, you go down, I really want an apple, you see the apple, you take an apple. And you don't know it's somebody's property. Did you sin? Well, no, you did not. So the only way you can really sin is if you have the natural inclination to begin with. You have the desire, and you know that it's wrong to do, and then the last part would be your intention or your will to what the will is when you do that. If you think to yourself, I know stealing's wrong, but I'm starving to death, and I don't think that they would mind if I took one apple. It's not like I'm going to destroy their crop or anything like that, but I am literally on the verge of starvation. Something like that, where your intention is not a harmful intention, where you're not intending to cause suffering at the same time, but you're trying to survive yourself. There's a balance with intention as well. You can know that something is wrong in one situation, but when you bring your intention into it, certain things are not sin. Now, you can't have a positive intention when you're harming a young child, for instance. You can't, because, for instance, like pedophilia. When you come to pedophilia, it's like one thing where it's like, okay, stupid fucking example, but like Sargon of Akkad and Anita Sarkeesian at VidCon. Sargon of Akkad did fucking nothing. He may have wanted to bitch her out. He may have wanted to troll her. He has definitely strong inclinations towards that. He might have even willed to want to do that, but he didn't do it. You have to act, and you have to know it's wrong. He knows he's wrong. He might have the will to want to do it, but he didn't actually do it. So he didn't do anything wrong. And you can break down all ethics, I think, in this sort of way. You have to look at intention. You have to look at will. You have to look at the actual act itself. You have to look at the knowledge of the person and all this other crap. In society, I think you have to have more structured rules. For instance, if you kill somebody, you're going to prison. There was a story of somebody who was rich who killed somebody, and he got off because he didn't know it was wrong. What the fuck? No. Even if you don't know what's wrong, killing someone, you should maybe manslaughter or something like that if it wasn't intentional, if it was an accident. But if you walk up to someone and you're like, bam, shoot him in the head, and then you go to the court and you're like, I didn't know it was wrong, you should still go to prison. Like you didn't know it was wrong to harm another human being, to kill another human being. That never crossed your mind. I call bullshit on that. They're completely hopeless. In that case, you probably should get them off the street. They're probably a psychopath. They have no empathy. And this was an article I remember hearing about quite a while ago, so it's probably not even in the mind frame of anybody anymore. But this was something that did actually happen. He either got off with a lighter sentence or that was his claim or something. Or I know that he didn't get the full punishment at the very least, and it's kind of disgusting that would be allowed to happen. I'm not saying he shot him in the head or anything, just walked up, but like the person was like, I didn't know this was wrong. I come from a really rich family. I've never had teachings about ethics or morality or anything like that. How bullshit on that, but yeah. And the reason why I bring up the morality part is that part of these discussions and stuff is you want to be able to change people's morality and whatnot. So you have to be able to come from it from a logical, a spiritual, and emotional standpoint, and all of these things. And it's why I feel like you can't have a good scope of morality and of how we should live our lives unless you have a balance. You really should have a balance. It's like, does the thief who steals because he's poor and hungry and starving, should he lose his hand? No. Should he go to prison? No. Should the teenager who breaks into your store and sets it on fire and commits arson because they think it's a good prank, should they go to prison? Yeah. Yeah, they should go to juvie or prison. Yeah. Yeah. So. Oh, and I guess this is the other thing I didn't quite explain well enough. You can have, if you lack knowledge that something's wrong, but you still do something with the intention to hurt somebody, that's a sin. So, it's a balance of many different things. Like, if you're doing something specifically to hurt somebody, and this is kind of why, like, if you have malicious intent, this is kind of why I like common law so much, is it doesn't really matter what it was. If it harms another person, even if it wasn't illegal or anything like that. Like, I'm talking about ethics, morality, and sin and stuff like that. From sin, I think is the best way to think about morality. And the reason why is not from a spiritual perspective, but like, you can approach the idea of sin as a concept, as a more abstract concept of like a group of behaviors and a group of not desired things. And you have to be able to determine whether or not someone is or is not behaving in a way in which is morally correct, right? Alright, so I think I'm going to end this video now. I'm a little tired. So I hope you guys all just have a fantastic day. Bye.